had something to say.
You can do something spontaneous.
Yeah.
Or I can.
My letters keep the light the match lit. Well, it didn't work, did it?
Yes, it
Yeah,
did.
you didn't say something.
We light this candle for the brightness that Amy brought into each one of our lives in her own special way.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Candy, do you want to give us a little update?
Okay, I
Yeah.
can do that. When I think about moving Amy and how you weren't able to keep up with her then, I thought, well, I should tell you that the night before we left, she stood in her dining room window and looked out at the park and the Lake Michigan and said, how am I going to give this up? And I said, I know, this isn't Kansas, is it? And she'd lived in Kansas. She'd gone to college in Kansas and had lived there with her first husband, so she knew about Kansas. But she so loved Chicago and Hyde Park in particular. But she also knew that she needed to move, and she was ready to be near family, and she was very happy to be going near family. It just was that, why did it have to be in Kansas? So, but
We heard about that.
yes, I know. And
Black and white.
we drove straight there because she was in the kind of, by that time her dementia had gotten to the point that we really didn't think we could stop overnight because she wouldn't sleep, we wouldn't have slept, and then we would have been driving again in the morning. So we just pushed through and got her there, and she, and at first, when she first started saying, yes, I need to move to Kansas, her idea was that she'd go with my sister-in-law and I, and she'd visit places in Hutchinson, and then she'd come back and she'd decide where she wanted to go. Well, I was glad that that kind of idea kind of faded because I knew that that wasn't going to work. But so this was her, when we got there, it was about 10:15 or 10:30 at night finally, and we opened the door. And the staff there was so good. They understood that she was not the typical resident that they got there because she was so young, and hers was not aging dementia. It was from a neurological disease that had multiple diagnoses because of the different lobes that were atrophying, and so based on the symptoms, every symptom that she had could be traced to the lobe that was atrophying. And when you saw her early on in the symptoms, she still seemed fairly normal.
Yeah.
She just couldn't hold down a job anymore because she couldn't, and as a consultant and an attorney, she couldn't plan for the next client meeting and pull it all together and accomplish it. But it wasn't because there was really a lot of noticeable things going on with her at that point. But the next things that kicked in were her motor skills, especially on her left arm and hand, was difficult. She had a hard time using those two hands together anymore. And one time we were walking down the street from Fair Trader, and she was helping me carry boxes back to the condo so we could pack things, and she kept dropping the one in her left hand. And I said to her, you know, Amy, that's like an alien hand. You don't always know it's there, so that's why you're having trouble with that. She says, oh, it's my disease, not me. And I said, that's right, it's your disease, it's not you. And that made her feel better. But when she walked into Elm Grove, where she stayed first in Hutchinson, the door was open and she looked in and she says, oh, this is just so small. And she turned around and walked out, and the staff was worried she was leaving, and they went, oh no, she's leaving. And I said, no, she's okay. And you just had to redirect her. And I said, Amy, you haven't seen the whole thing yet. And I knew it was still going to feel small to her because it was a studio, but you know, that's what you do when you have to go. But we took the wall hangings that she liked the best and tried to, and we took my dad's rocking chair and ottoman and some other things that were special to her and fixed up the place. And they gave her a room that she had a view of grass and a few small trees and that kind of thing. So they were trying to make it as good because I talked to them about this move and how hard it was going to be for her. And within a couple months, because I would go back and forth to be with her for various things and for medical appointments, take care of things for her. And within a few short months, when I would show up, she would say, come see my view. Isn't that beautiful grass out there? And look at that tree. And it was just a little stumpy tree. But she really started appreciating. And when I take her out to go to a doctor's appointment or just to go to lunch or something, she'd look at wide open fields and she'd say, isn't that wonderful? I hope they don't build on it. They just leave it as a wide open field. And I was just very grateful that she adapted that way and enjoyed the scenery that she had available to her and didn't pine after what she was missing from here. And for a while she remembered you all, and we could talk about, you know, her friends here and all that. But then after about a year later, that was just kind of a distant memory to her because the dementia was proceeding. And then it was last August, a new place had opened, because one of her things while she was in Elm Grove was that she wanted to be contributing in some way to life and other people's life.
Right.
If she could have been a part of a study to study her disease, she would have loved that. But there aren't enough people with it to have a group to study, so it was hard, and there wasn't anything they knew to do about it, except to treat it symptomatically. But she really wanted to contribute in some way. She wanted to have some younger people around her that she could interact with, and not just the people who look at you with aphasic faces. I used to, sometimes I would go over there and she would just, and when she'd see me, she'd excuse herself from the dinner table to come, and she'd look at the people and she'd say, "It was so nice having dinner with you." And they didn't respond to her at all. And I thought, this is just so sad. Or she'd pass somebody in the hall as if we were walking, she'd greet them, and she didn't necessarily get a greeting back from them. And as we walked on, she'd say, "You know, it's always good to maintain greetings and politeness and courtesy to people." And I said, "You're right, Amy, it is. And Mother would be proud of you." And so I too would have liked to have seen her in a place that she was not just with people who were aging with strokes and dementia and all that. And then this new place opened up in Hutchinson, and it was built for people with dementia. So it was built very open. And there were younger people there. There was a doctor who was 60 and who had beginning dementia, and there was a school teacher who was about that age, and a city official who was right in that same 59 to 61 range. And she really was able to have good interaction with them and enjoyed visiting them and having dinner with them. Before this place, I didn't even know about that this place was being planned. She would say, "I just love to be with younger people," and I'd say, "I know, Amy, I would love to do that for you. I just don't know of any place where that's possible, because what you have is just not the norm." And they don't have places for people like with your condition, because there just aren't that many of you. So I felt like, as a Christian, I felt like the Lord had provided that for her last few months. We didn't know the end was that near. But in last October, I was there and took her to a doctor's appointment, and her walk had picked up, and I thought, "Oh, good, you're back up to a good pace again," because remember how she walked here, you couldn't keep up with her. and she had kind of slowed down at this other place that she was, and I hated when I would get her out, I would go to take her to the doctor or something and get her in the car, and she would have trouble getting in. But by the time I did it a couple times, and she was up walking faster again and moving back in and forth in the car good. So when I went in October and she had picked up her pace, I was really glad to see that. I said, "Amy, this is great. We can go out for faster walks again." But then by mid-December, she had gotten, like she got here sometimes with her caregivers, but more so. And she was scaring some of the residents, visitors, and because she was getting very paranoid. If somebody was smiling, she thought they were laughing at her, and there were things like that were going on that go on typically with dementia. And so the plan was to admit her to the hospital nearby, where they had a unit where they did this kind of thing. They evaluated people, and they tried to get them on a medication that would work and get the level right, and then they could go back to where they were living. And that, for about a week there, it was mid-December, the week before Christmas, she was admitted there. And for about a week, they hadn't found the right medication for her yet, but at least she was functioning, and she was talking to the staff and those kinds of things. And then she got to the point where they tried to help her sit in a chair, and she'd stiffen up, and they couldn't get her to sit in a chair anymore. And I remembered when she was in Hutch, there was a time that she walked bent over to one side for a while, and she'd do that for a couple weeks at a time, and then she wouldn't do it, and then she'd do it again for a few days, and then not do it. And I was concerned that other things about her were going to be strained, other muscles and tendons and things. So we had a physical therapist visit her, and the physical therapist stood in front of a mirror with her and said, now who's upright and who's bent over? And Amy said, you're bent over and I'm upright. And so it was the neurological disease that was giving her a misperception. And I think that maybe that was happening when they were trying to get her to sit in a chair too. And there wasn't any way to fix that. Then by the end of December, she wasn't eating anymore. She wouldn't swallow anything. And then when her gag and swallowing reflex was tested, she didn't have them anymore. And so she had got pneumonia, and so she was on antibiotic for a while, and the pneumonia cleared up. But she just never, once she didn't eat, and she went sit in a chair, then there isn't anything to do except just to have her in bed. And so that was sad. I mean, she was going the opposite direction. And the people where she was living, when I kept them posted on what was going on, they were shocked because they were keeping her room ready for her to come back to. That's what they expected. And she stopped responding in any way probably about mid-January. Because when I was talking to her one day, she responded to me, not with conversation or anything, but she knew what I said and she could give one-word answers, but then after that she didn't respond anymore to anybody. And so by the time she died at the end of January, she hadn't had any food or liquid for about a month. But her physical body was so strong. There was nothing physically wrong with her, and she was so young, at 60, that it took a long time for her body just to give up. So that was sad to watch her do that. But I think she was, I told you, I was talking to you about her wanting to be productive in some way. So that was probably one of the hardest things for her, that she couldn't do everything she thought of doing, she wasn't able to do because of her mobility issues and because of her visual spatial issues. She couldn't read anymore. When we would go to clean up her room, and she had tons of books, because she'd go to the bookshelves where they were and bring all these books back to her room, but she couldn't really do anything with them. And she couldn't maintain enough of a focus for long enough to listen to a book on tape. So, and when she was still here in Chicago, she said to me one time, why couldn't I have lost what I wasn't good at instead of losing what I was good at? She said, my brain has been everything to me. And I said, I know, Amy, it has been, and this is hard. But as long as she seemed to appreciate that I understood what was happening to her and how hard it was. And so she was very good. We had a good time together. In the midst of all of that, she maintained her sense of humor, and we could joke together and have fun together and go out for yogurt together as long as she was able to do that, and go out to lunch and whenever I would visit. And my sister-in-law would take her to the parade and Hutch and do different things with her. So it was good for her to be with family, and she saw her great nieces and was able to have Christmas with them, and she saw the other kids that came from Detroit to visit, her nephew's wife and kids, and so she was a part of family there that she wasn't able to have that here, and so that was really good, and she enjoyed it and appreciated it, and I was happy to be able to see her enjoying family and being more involved with family. So I understand why she loves Hyde Park. I love it too. And in a way, I'm going to be really sad when her condo has sold and will probably close the end of the month. And I thought, oh, we won't be able to go back there anymore. And Eastview Park is such a pleasant place to live, and it's so peaceful and nice. And I love to see the kids playing and chalk and sidewalk chalk and all the normal family things that go on there are very, I love seeing that. So I will be disappointed not to be able to go there and see her apartment and be a part of that. But so I understand why she loved it. But that's not what was the way her life was going. So I trust that we helped her make the best of it as she went through that process.
Do you want your iBook?
Oh, yes.
You want your, here, we can bring it to you.
There. What we did, because that was the other thing Margaret said, be sure and tell people.
I love that.
Amy had said she wanted to be cremated. And she wanted her ashes scattered in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where she ran that bed and breakfast with a cousin, or at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. But she said, if that's really not possible, then do what you know that I would like. And so it wasn't really in the middle of winter. It wasn't going to be feasible to go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. No. And New Mexico, you know, we weren't going to be able to get us all together to get to New Mexico. So Sally, my other sister, and Kathy, our sister-in-law, were talking